If you did the best you can at that moment in time, then that was the right decision at that moment in time. Welcome to Lead with Heart, the podcast for people that believe compassion and impact go hand in hand. Great leadership isn't just about results, it's about how we uplift others, inspire change, and serve our communities. If you're looking for insight on how to lead with empathy and make a real difference, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Moryah Jackson, and I'm glad you're here. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining the Lead with Heart podcast. I'm really excited to have you. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is my very first podcast. Yay, that's fine. It'll be great and you'll do wonderful.
You.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background and, maybe what does leading with heart mean to you? So I went to University of Tennessee in Knoxville and my major was speech comm. So of course, after you're like, what do you do with that? It's so broad. And I heard a lot of people were like, oh, we're going into sales. We're doing public speaking. I love public speaking. I love sales. So it was kind of a natural lane to go in to be a national, corporate sales trainer. So that's really where I started. And I would travel around every Monday through Thursday for 5 years almost, flying to banks and credit unions to do corporate sales training, to do mystery shopping, marketing, and I loved it until I didn't. I was actually in New York on 9/11.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
And
that.
so I was doing a training in one of the bank buildings, Bank of Astoria, and the president came down and yelled, "We've been bombed." And nobody really knew exactly if it was the bank building or just an area of New York. So we all hid under tables and called our families. And I was at the time staying in a motel or a hotel in Queens. So I finally got a taxi back and I actually watched everybody walk over the Brooklyn Bridge. And it was crazy. It was just crazy. But I was on the first flight out of Philadelphia, the very first flight that was allowed to fly. I was on it. And after that, the feeling of travel changed, the security changed, and then I had met the love of my life. And of course, we wanted to get married and start a family. You can't really do that in different cities and states. So I was kind of like, what's next? I still love sales. So I stayed with sales. And honestly, my husband is an educator, and just watching him have a passion for what he does and really serve people, I wanted to do that. And I thought, okay, how can I combine my skill with public speaking and with communication and my background, but go into a venue that will serve people? And nonprofit just made sense. That is such a powerful story, Jennifer. Just wow about being there for 9/11.
Mhm.
It's unbelievable to think that it happened so long ago and just to think about how many lives were changed as a result of that. And my heart always goes out to families, friends, just people who lived through that experience. So definitely commend you for, what you did and how you were able to bounce back from that. But thank you for sharing that story.
Absolutely.
And I love to hear just your path for figuring out what to do. You go to school, you major in something, and then you hear your classmates going in different directions, and you had to figure out what worked for you, and to hear how you combine that skill set with also giving back to people. I mean, you mentioned you met your husband, you met the love of your life, and you decided that nonprofits, would be the best place for your skill set. So we moved to Columbia. This summer it will be 14 years. And we moved for my husband's job. He's in education. And, I strongly believe there's seasons of life. And one of my seasons was I stayed at home and raised my children. And it was a very successful season, I felt like. But then there became a point in time where it was a new season. And I was like, okay, it's time to go back into the workforce. And it was really interesting looking around Columbia and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I wanted to go and serve and be in a position that every night when I went to sleep, I would be like, okay, I made a difference. Even if it was small, I made a difference. And I wanted to wake up with that same energy of, I want to make a difference. So before this, I also was in nonprofit, and I loved it. But I always think that no matter what you're doing, if you're leading with your heart, especially, you have to be your authentic self. And I think a lot of people can put on an extreme polish, but after time, I mean, everybody kind of sees the engine under the hood. And I also think that the people that you work with and that you serve can see that also. And if you're in a field, in a career, in a job that you feel like you are being true to yourself, you're being true to your mission, and you're excited and happy to be there, I think it translates. I think people can tell. And I also think that they can tell when you aren't. So it kind of works both ways.
And I think it's good you point that out. One of the things that's important to me about this podcast is sharing, what it means to lead with heart. And so I'm really thankful that you talked about being authentic because sometimes people make career choices based on just other factors. And I think you said it beautifully. When you're true to yourself, people can see it, people can feel it. The authenticity starts to come out. And so many people are struggling with purpose. And so you also mentioned a mission. And so I would love to hear you talk more about the mission and how following your mission helps you lead with heart.
I think following your mission will help you lead with heart. I think it helps you get through hard times because if you have an anchor and a focus, your purpose and your mission don't change. So it'll always reground you. I dated a guy in college and his mom gave me a book for Christmas and it was called The Path. And it was the best thing out of that relationship. but we, the book was, I mean, you got really quiet and it was the whole idea that you had this, that everybody has a path in life based on their skill sets, their heart, their truths, just servitude. And you can go into several fields, but you have to figure out what your skill set is and what your heart is. And so I have a lot of things that are not my skill set, but I feel like I'm a really effective communicator. I feel like I listen. Um, and I feel like I have an energy and passion. And if I plug that in, if I found that I stay true to myself and plug that in, no matter what degree or what field I'm in, it always pays off.
Wow, that's powerful. I think that's amazing. And before we get a little bit too far, I wanted to hear more. How do you define leading with heart? What does that mean to you? And, we'll talk about this a little bit further on, but I also loved how you talked about life in seasons and you talked about it being a meaningful season to stay at home with your children. And I thought that was a wonderful example of you were intentionally leading with heart. So tell us a little bit more about what that means to you.
Sure. Well, so first I'm going to stay with the seasons. A lot of people define success, especially women. We struggle with it because there's a guilt. You either go into the workforce and you go that path and you feel like you're dropping the ball a little bit or juggling home and you have a foot in one world and a foot in the other, or you stay home altogether. So for me in particular, defining success, it looked different for me. Uh, Almost 7 years ago, I went through a breast cancer journey and I was in the middle of working at another nonprofit and I caught it early and everything. It was a lot of surgeries, but caught it earlier. It's behind me. But I had to redefine success there also because I had to come out of a job. And going through my mind at the time when I should have just been focusing on getting through, breast cancer and through surgery and just recovery, I started off thinking like, what is this going to look like when I go back? Like, am I going to be marketable? And that was a real concern. And that was for a short period of time, relatively speaking. But I think about women in general, like if you take time off to raise a family, and I did that as well, going back, what do I have to offer? How do I repackage it? And that whole process was just very interesting. At the end of the day, there are seasons through our life, and going to work full time is not defined as success. Staying home full time is not defined as success. We can make each season successful, but the definition changes. And I feel like for me at that time, staying home and raising my family or staying home and getting healthy, that was the most successful that I could be. And then to circle back around, just with leading with heart, again, it's just being authentic. It's staying true to yourself. And you can tell when a leader is authentic. And it makes a huge difference in the agency. And everybody wants to follow an authentic leader and authentic coworkers. So
hmm No, I think that's very powerful. And every time you tell me about your breast cancer journey, it just reminds me how strong and resilient you are. I mean, you've gone through so much in life and you're just always positive and optimistic and helpful. And that's just who you are. So, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story. And I would definitely love to hear a little bit more about that as well, because you also shared how you turned that experience into a way to help and empower others. But I would get back to that. You had so much good content at one time, but I thought it was really important for our listeners to hear more about defining success. I love how you said that definition may change or it may not look the same for everyone. And I think that's something that really resonates with people. Do you feel as though your definition of success changed as you went through different seasons in life or you had different experiences, or were you intentional, or can you just tell a little bit more about how that definition changed for you, and maybe how did you come to grips when it changed sometimes?
yeah, absolutely. I think it's ever changing, actually. I don't, if there's ever a point in time where it doesn't change, I think that your life is pretty stagnant and maybe something needs to change. So I know that when I was in my 20s, I defined success as career and the title and getting a certain job and traveling, and it was everything. And then all of a sudden in my 30s and in the throes of when my children, and I have 3 children, when they were young, it was like a screeching halt. Defining success were making sure that I was there every night to read to them. And I was there every morning to wake them up. And I didn't miss any of the special moments. And it was to build them up, to make sure that they were secure and happy and confident and healthy and all the things. And that really, at the end of the day, that's success, no matter what season you're in. That right there, that's it. But then when they started getting older and more independent, I wanted to set an example. I wanted to be a role model. I felt like I was a pretty good role model going through cancer. I showed them that I could be stubborn and tough and resilient, but I wanted to show them also that after that, I could get back up and I could go back to work. And I wanted to serve others. I was extremely, extremely grateful, appreciative, blessed, all the things coming out of breast cancer that most people will share with you. And I had a heart to give back. I spent about a year working with Lexington Medical Center with their foundation, just doing speaking engagements, being an ambassador. And that was probably the most impactful and meaningful chapter. And it was kind of that feeling, and it catches you because I felt like I was helping others. And that was really what drove me to return after to nonprofit. I loved it, and I was very, very, very blessed. And I think a lot of times in a situation that like I went through or somebody going through hard times, it's very easily to find the negative and the why me and the But if you focus on kind of the beauty in the situation and the small blessings, it'll shape you. It really will. But my kids saw that. They saw me going back. They saw me moving forward. They see me helping others, wanting to serve others. So a lot of it also is I define success as, am I setting a good example? Am I modeling behavior and work ethic that I want them to mimic?
Wow, I think that's so powerful. I mean, you're talking about leading with heart, and for you, it's clear that you are definitely a servant leader. You want to make a difference, you want to give back, you want to help others, and you do it in so many ways. You're doing it with your family, you're doing it in the community, you're doing it by sharing your story with people who may be going through a similar journey. So, thank you for doing that. And it was very powerful for me to hear you talk about you're going through this experience that could be difficult and negative, but you wanted to say positive and you wanted to see the blessings in that. Do you have any tips on how did you stay encouraged? Um, how did you become such a resilient person going through something that is, quite life changing? I mean, that's not a minor situation to deal with, Jennifer. I mean, you say it and you're smiling and you're glowing and you're happy to help, but that's really a hard thing. What kept you going and how did you look for the positive?
First of all, I was born stubborn, so I have to I have to do full transparency. I'm very competitive and very stubborn, so that those qualities help. You don't want to be defeated by anything. Um, it wasn't easy every day. I mean, I think looking back, because it feels like now looking back 6 years, I can say that overall I stayed really, really, really hopeful, and I did. I dug in and I fought, but there were definitely times where it was beyond overwhelming and anxiety filled. For a lot of it, I think it's because my personality, I'm very type A. I like to be in control. And the cancer journey really, I mean, it knocked me off my feet because I wasn't in control for the first time. I remember when I went into one of my surgeries, I actually asked my doctor who was doing the lumpectomy. I said, can you just put me in twilight sleep so I can, not be all the way asleep? It was my first one. And he looked at me. It was Dr. Barwick. And he was like, Jennifer, what are you going to do? Are you going to help me do the surgery? And I was like, no, I just thought I could help. And he was like, I'll never forget this. He said, let me ask you something. If we were in the air and you were in the plane with me, would you be the pilot or the co-pilot? And I said, he said, or the passenger. I said, I would be the pilot. He said, well, I'm the plane. So sit back, let me do my job. And so it was a big lesson. It was a big lesson just in being patient, realizing you're not in control. And I think if I could go back 6 years and redo the whole process, I would have let a lot of things go and and I prayed a lot, but I would just realize that that's what was my purpose, to follow instructions, to take care of myself, to rest, and to pray. And the rest of it, you can't be in charge of everything in life. You've got to surround yourself by people that know more, that are the experts in what they're the expert in, and you've got to trust.
That's really powerful. It's hard to let go sometimes. And I think it's important for listeners to hear that you acknowledge it wasn't easy every day. It was hard, but, you pushed through it and you remained hopeful. Hope is so important. And I think that's a critical component. And also just letting go. Like you said, I loved it. Surround yourself with experts, trust your community. And again, those aren't easy things, but it's important to be mindful that, okay, this is what I need to do at this moment to get through this. So again, thank you for sharing such just a powerful story, and to see how you've taken a situation that was tough and you used it as an opportunity to share with people. And I know for a fact that your story was a blessing to someone else who was going through, what you went through. So thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I love that we talked about different seasons. We talked about how your definition of success has changed over the years. I would love to hear, do you have any tips that you would give to your younger self? What are some things that you've learned along the way that might help someone else on their journey right now?
So it falls right in line with what I was saying with the whole cancer journey. N- Control what you can control and do a really good job at it. Bring your absolute best. And what you can't control, let it go. And to also realize with the seasons, I mean, there are going to be high seasons, and you really appreciate those high seasons because they're going to help get you through the low seasons. But even the low seasons, it's just a season. Seasons change. So just keeping in mind that everything will eventually change. Even if it's good, really, really good, it'll even out. But if it's low and if it's hard,
Mhm. I think those are great tips for you to share. You also talked about being a mother of three children, and I'm a mother as well, but I have two. And I always tell people it concerns me a little bit when you start to get outnumbered. um, and I, I love that you talk about just the juggle that parents do, that mothers do, dealing with guilt. What would you share with mothers who, are raising young children in particular? I think you nailed it. When they're younger and they're so dependent on you, it's a little bit more different than when they have, just a little bit more independence. But how do you, as a mom, deal with the juggle? And then also, how do you deal with feeling like, okay, I might not be doing well at home. I might not be doing well at work. What can I do better? You have all these things going on. What advice would you give?
oh goodness. Well, 360 app helps a lot. I like to be able to see where they're going and have a good online calendar to be able to see everybody's colors, what everybody's doing. But, I've talked with friends like a lot, and we've talked about like parenting decisions, like when they were young, like their parents. And I'll have friends share with me that, their parent did this and their parent did this. And I even can think of circumstances where I'm like, well, I don't know if I would have done that. I think at the end of the day, it's very easy to say in hindsight, I would have done this or I would have done this differently. That's hindsight, right?
Mhm. And it's 2020.
But in the moment, you have to be forgiving to yourself and have grace and say, I did the best that I did with the information and knowledge that I had at the time. And you have to move on.
That's perfect. And I think that's great advice for parenting and just for life in general. I
It
mean, that's
is.
wonderful. That's
Well,
wonderful.
it's just you can pick everything apart and you can say, oh, I should have done this. Well, the reality is the mindset that I have, the life experiences that I have now, that everything that has shaped me to make me think, oh, this is how I would handle it. I didn't have that as a 30-year-old mom. I didn't have that as a 35-year-old mom. So you do the best you can. And when you say that to yourself, if you're having any guilt over anything that you should have done different, if you did the best you can at that moment in time, then that was the right decision at that moment in time. So, I mean, kids change. I think the number one, no matter what age, what anything is, you have to be present. You have to be involved. They have to know you're present. They have to know you're involved. As much as I'm like, I want to serve people and I want to be here, if my child has a track meet or my child is playing guitar, I'm going to be there front row to see them. And that makes me a better person at work.
I
And that makes
absolutely love that. And I love that because that shows that you are leading with heart and you're leading from that value of family is important. And so it's really great to hear that. And also, I think you're hitting on the fact that you're a better teammate when you have taken care of your family and you've made the time to prioritize them and what they need. So I think that's really impressive because sometimes we don't lead from our values and there's a little bit of misalignment. So it's great that you know that that's a priority and you're going to do what you need to do to be there for them.
There's a little bit of like, I want to show example and I want to show you that I'm super mom and working and cooking and all of it. But there's also a little bit of put your own oxygen mask on first. And I think as your children, especially as they get older, I think you have to prioritize like keeping friendships and doing something for you. And because they will be in college one day and then you're going to be sitting there. So to be well balanced and to be successful and to be a good mom, to be a good dad, to be a good parent, I don't think it is pouring yourself 100% selflessly into them all the time. I think you have to have a balance because if they see a balance and if you're modeling that and you're happy and you have well-rounded, basically it makes you a great parent. So it's all about balance.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm really big on saying you can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time.
That's right.
And that's one
That's
of my
exactly
favorite
right.
things to say and tell people. And, you know, every day might be different. And so that's just one of the things I think for me as a parent, being flexible and patient are things that I've learned. And I've just realized, hey, I can't control everything all the time. And I have to go with the flow and really make those game time decisions in the moment. And I do believe that's helped me become a better leader. I really do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Who in your life has modeled heart centered leadership? Who do you look up to and who do you admire? Who do you admire in terms of people who lead with heart?
My mom, she was a single mom and worked a full-time job and honestly did it all. I don't know how she did it all. My grandmother helped to raise me, and she was there for all of the grandchildren, especially my sister and I helped raise us, but she also was a connector in the community. So I just remember if there was a neighbor going through a crisis or ever had problems, I can't tell you how many times I saw people sitting on her swing in her front yard with her and her counseling them, just lending an ear and just seeing that. Um, it was amazing. It was actually amazing. My sister, she does everything in the community. She's there for her husband, she's there for her children, but she is leading every booster and track and cross country, and she's on the committee at church. And she just has put a footprint in the community that is so deep in the sand that if she pulled out of anything, she would be missed.
I absolutely love hearing about your grandmother. It's so powerful. That's leadership. Sometimes you think you have to have a big title or a big position, but being there and helping, and I love that you called it a community connector. I think that exemplifies leading with heart. So, from an early age, you've had very strong role models where you've seen this. And so you're actually modeling their behavior.
And I'm going to add this, not only strong role models, strong female role models, very powerful, strong female role models.
That's amazing. So I would love to hear a little bit more. Why do you think it's important to highlight that it was female leaders and female role models?
I think a lot of times, um, men are thought of for being the providers and being strong and holding the families together. And in some families, majority of families, maybe, I don't know. In mine, it was very strong, loud, um, authentic, loyal, opinionated women. And there was never, I guess, this feeling from me that I was ever quieted. or it was suggested to, oh, kind of be more ladylike and more quiet and subtle, like let a man have the big ideas and have the opinions. It was never like that. It was it was very empowering to have such strong female role models with big personalities that allowed you to dream and encouraged you. And I never felt like there was like a limit. It's funny because tried to explain this to my husband, growing up like in a single parent, and I would see my dad and stuff, but growing up in a single parent home, and it was me and my mom and my sister, and we all have very big personalities. It's almost like there was never your traditional dynamic of go ask your father, and you have to have a certain role. Like women are falling into this gender specific role and men have a gender specific role. There was never any of that because it was all women. And so it's almost like we just empowered each other and grew and grew and grew and got louder, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. My mom always said it's gonna take a really strong man to to marry you and to, love that, and I found a really strong man, and he's really quiet, ironically, and his leadership styles, he's very quiet and a very quiet personality and more of an introvert, and it works, but I think there's something beautiful about a woman that is being raised to not have any ceiling.
Mm. That's so powerful, Jennifer. I think that's great for our listeners to hear. There's something powerful about a woman being raised to realize that there are no ceilings. And I think it hits on just the gender stereotypes that have evolved over years. I mean, you and I come from a generation where we've benefited from so many female
Yes.
trailblazers.
Absolutely.
And that
Yes.
was part of the reason I wanted to ask you, why is it important to highlight female leadership? But I mean, think about it. It wasn't until the 70s that women could have their own credit or they could own property. There were so many obstacles that women had to overcome. And the fact of the matter is there were very specific gender roles, and it's really recent in the history of our country that more women aren't fitting into those stereotypical roles. And also, when you think about it, typically if you'll ask people, what does a leader look like, it'll, the image is typically a man. And so that's definitely changing. So it's really powerful to hear that you grew up in a household with strong women. And so you yourself became a strong woman.
And you appreciate it when you don't feel like you have ceilings. When you really appreciate it is when you have a daughter and you're like, and her path has opened up even more. And that's when you really appreciate it. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I have heard my mom say before when we compare situations, and I'm like, well, why wasn't this said? Or did you do this? And she'll say things were different. People didn't do that back then, or it was different. And I can't relate. And I'm so glad I can't relate. And that's a good thing.
hmm No, I agree. Our society has definitely evolved quickly, and I do believe it's a positive thing when you have more perspectives or more experiences or more talents. It really makes the community stronger. So I think it's really, really important that we've evolved the way that we have, and that we're continuing to evolve because still there are things that we have to navigate and deal with as women in leadership, and it's important to talk about it. So That's great that you emphasize that. I should add that I decided to attend Columbia College, which at the time was a women's college. And I was really thankful for my formative years of, 18 to 22. I had the opportunity to learn about just so many different women's issues. And they were very intentional about bringing
Yes.
strong female leaders on
Yes.
campus. And that definitely played a major role in my life, during those formative years. And I had a chance to hear the stories, like you said, of the women who, were breaking barriers in different career fields and doing different things. So it's really powerful, and we're definitely fortunate to have the opportunities that we have today.
You ever feel like your lens would have been different if you would have attended a male female college?
Oh, absolutely. I know my academic experience would have been different because the curriculum was really tailored towards women's issues, and again, I'm really thankful for that. And specifically, we had a women's leadership institute, so it just talked about the challenges that I would face as a female leader. And again, the icing on the cake for me was the fact that the university would bring in strong female leaders in different positions, and they would be vulnerable. They would tell us about their stories. They would tell us about their families. They would tell us about their challenges and how they navigated. And so that really made a big impression on me. And I'm really thankful for that.
Because they were trying to prepare you for the real world and give you I mean, if they had glossed over it, you would have gone out and been like, "Oh, I didn't hear about this side of it." That's great.
Yeah, it was really wonderful. I love that you talk about how you have a daughter and you're just thankful that there's so many more opportunities for her. Are there particular experiences or skills that you encourage her to develop to better prepare her for what she'll encounter?
Yes, so she's in the STEM program at her high school, and she loves science. Um, she probably can work on math a little more, but the fields that used to not have as much female focus on, that's what she's driven to, and we really try to nurture that. So she is wanting to become a pediatric endocrinologist. So she has a lot of school ahead of her. Um, but we don't talk about things that you can't do because, well, in general, with our sons or daughter, that's not language we use. The book that we are talking about in right now in our staff meetings, Our Better Angels, we really focus a lot in this house on you have one life and it's okay to take risk. That's what shapes you and that's what challenges you and pushes you. And I know that my husband, Tommy, and I have taken a lot of risk in our life and they've paid off. And we wouldn't have the same experiences if we hadn't, if we were afraid. So we try to take the fear aspect out of it. Like, do what you're going to do and don't ever go into it of, oh, I can't because I might fail or what if. Do it. And one of the things that we were talking about in our book, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's not a mistake unless it's not fixable. And I mean, I think some of the most incredible lessons and experiences you get in life are because you've pushed yourself and you've challenged yourself. And we do that with our boys and our girl, but we have definitely gone about with Ella trying to empower her and letting her know her worth. And yeah, we have our kids are confident.
I think that's really important, and when you talk about leading with heart,
Mhm.
courage is a part of that. You have to have the courage to do something, and I'm really big on it's not I'm gonna try to do it, it's either you do it or you don't do it. And so I think when you just jump in and do it and you're like, "Okay, I have the skills that I need to figure this out," I think that's so important, and that courage is just a huge part of leading with heart.
Sure. And it takes a lot to try new things. It takes a lot to get out of your comfort zone. But I really do think that at the end of our life, I don't ever want to be in the position where I'd said, oh, what if? Or I wish I'd done this. So just go for it. Go for it. Something incredible might happen.
I love it. I think that's wonderful. As we're wrapping up, do you have any advice or tips that you would love to leave with our listeners?
Mhm. Be really purposeful. Find a mission that you are excited about and that really feels like it needs you, something that you have in you, a skill set, and then take that skill set and apply it. And just do your best, lead with your heart, be authentic. Um, I like to always think like beyond the golden rule, how would I like to be treated? But I really like to think when I'm especially serving and working toward others, putting them in a better position. If I was in that exact position, how would I want to be treated? What would be a blessing for me? And it's being an advocate and it's being an ambassador. There's a lot of people that, for one reason or another, either how they are brought up or just their personality or just life has dealt them a hand to where they don't feel empowered to advocate for themselves. And I think that we have an obligation to advocate for those around us for what's right and to be an ambassador for for people in general, but for missions that matter and change lives.
I absolutely love that. And the first thing it made me think of is when you're leading with heart, it's so important to have empathy. And empathy is very different from sympathy, but you want to put yourself in someone else's shoes and help them. And I think you're about to add something really great. What were you going to say about
I
empathy?
was just going to say that's one of the number one qualities of a great leader is being able to be empathetic and being able to try new things, being able to identify areas that you're not strong in. If you want to see a weak leader, the first thing I can see is a leader that has hired people just like them. Because you don't want to contend with anything else. You don't have the security and the confidence to be able to face new ideas, have fresh thoughts, have somebody that might challenge you. That's a weak leader. A strong leader feels for others and they're wanting to make change. They have ideas, they're willing to be creative, and they're willing to surround themselves by people that might not think like them, might not look like them, but the one thing they all have in common is they have the mission at the center.
I think that's powerful, Jennifer. It's so important to bring a group of people around you. And my language is always strengths. How do we complement each other's strengths and work together and build something, in the name of that common goal? So I think that's very powerful. Right now, there's a lot going on in society. I feel like there's always a lot going on, but what are some things that are keeping you hopeful?
So when I look especially at Central South Carolina Habitat for Humanity, and I look at the volunteers on our build, that makes me hopeful because you're giving up a day, you're giving up an hour, you're giving up time to put somebody else's house, bettering their life, bettering their family in front of your own. The quilters give me hope. The women that come out and quilt for our families. My mom's a quilter, and I know because she's like, "Don't wash it. Put it in a bag." No, I mean, I know it's blood, sweat, and tears, and it's hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. One time I asked her, "How long does it take you to make a quilt?" And she's like, "Hundreds of hours." I mean, months and months and months. And that's for me or for my children, for somebody she loves. So imagine pouring all of that effort and time and work into a family you've never met, that you will never go in their house probably and see necessarily the quilt on their bed, but you know it's there to cover them, to protect them, to give them love, to give them warmth. That is one of the most moving things that I've ever witnessed.
I absolutely love that, and that's beautiful. And when we talk about leading with heart, um, I think it's important to know that there are neighbors still out helping neighbors. And the book that we're reading by Jonathan Reckford, the Habitat for Humanity International CEO, it's called Our Better Angels. And for me, I see, yes, there are things that are not great going on in the world right now, but every day there are people in the community doing the right thing. They're being kind. They're helping someone else. They're putting someone else's needs ahead of their own. And that's leading with heart. You know, people may not have titles or particular roles, but they're giving. And that's definitely a beautiful thing. And that definitely keeps me hopeful as well.
Absolutely.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure talking to you. I learned a lot. You are definitely a person who exemplifies leading with heart. Thank you for everything you do and the difference that you're making in the lives of so many people around you. It's definitely appreciated.
Thank you. And thanks for having me on. So, my first podcast is in the books.
Yay, you did a wonderful job. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
You're welcome. It was fun.
Okay.